Has the president offered any clarity on the situation in the Strait of Hormuz?
Alex, we are actively trying to confirm this reporting as we speak, but Axios is saying that the president actually held a situation room meeting this morning on this very topic, on the fact that the Strait of Hormuz is now closed. They say that Vice President Vance attended, as well as the Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, Secretary of State Marco Rubio, and General Dan Kane, who our producer Emily Hung spotted leaving the White House earlier today. But the president actually spoke to reporters this morning in the Oval Office, and he struck a tone that was both optimistic and somewhat threatening. He acknowledged that Iran is now starting those attacks again on ships, as we've seen in reporting, but he appeared to downplay the impact on supply chains at home. I want you to take a listen to him.
They wanted to close up the strait again, as they've been doing for years, and they can't blackmail us.
There's a lot of confusion about what exactly is going on with the Strait of Hormuz, because just yesterday, Iran announced the strait is completely open. But today, Iran says it is back under its strict control until the U.S. ends its blockade on Iranian ships. And now a shipping monitor run by the British Navy says it's received a report of 2 Iranian gunboats firing at a tanker in the Strait of Hormuz on Saturday. In the Oval Office this morning, Trump told reporters that Iran got a little cute, acknowledging they are trying to close the strait again, but insists there are still good conversations going on. But late last night, Trump warned that if a deal is not reached by the end of the U.S.-Iran ceasefire, which expires in just 4 days, Trump said bombs could start dropping again. So how did we get here? Because yesterday Trump was projecting a lot of optimism that a peace deal is close, even claiming that Iran has agreed to give up their enriched uranium and work with the U.S. to bring the material back to the U.S.
Every time I've been waking up, or in the first few days, I thought I was floating.
100%.
I truly thought I was floating, and I had to convince myself I wasn't. And even after 328 days in space on my previous mission, I never did the thing where you think something will float in front of you. I've done that on this return for some reason. I put a shirt in the air and it went. It actually surprised me.
When the sun eclipsed behind the moon, I think all 4 of us, I turned to Victor and I said, I don't think humanity has evolved to the point of being able to comprehend what we were looking at right now, because it was otherworldly and it was amazing.
I kept seeing this depth to, I guess, the galaxy, for what we were visually observing out there, this depth to the galaxy that I just had never experienced before. And it's not that I could tell which stars were really closer and further, because it has to do with how bright they are, but because of how bright they are and their differences, they look like you can tell where they are.
Donald Trump's pre-midterm election season jitters just got a whole lot worse because former President Barack Obama, who is much more popular than Donald Trump, has stepped into the mix, throwing his political weight behind Virginia's redistricting effort as Democrats there try to fight back against the Trump-backed gerrymandering in red states. Take a look.
Hey, Virginia. Early voting is underway, and Virginians are turning out in record numbers to vote yes. By voting yes, you have a chance to do something important, not just for the Commonwealth, but for our entire country. By voting yes, you can push back against the Republicans trying to give themselves an unfair advantage in the midterms. By voting yes, you can take a temporary step to level the playing field. And we're counting on you. Early voting is happening right now. Election Day is on April 21st. So go to iwillvote.com.
A manhunt is underway in Naples, Italy, after police say at least 5 armed men robbed a bank in broad daylight. 25 people were held hostage and later rescued. The robbers escaped through a hole in the floor they had drilled during the night. They made off with several dozen safety deposit boxes. The Naples mayor described the thieves as highly skilled professionals who, quote, did a job straight out of a movie.
Breaking news in Lebanon, Israel has broken the ceasefire and did so within hours of being in place. They have continued bombing, killing, destroying homes, and occupying Lebanese villages. Trump said yesterday Israel has to stop. They can't continue to blow up buildings, and I am not going to allow it. What does Israel do right after? Bomb a motorcycle and a car in southern Lebanon, killing 1 person. America's response to this, a U.S. official later clarified to the outlet, that Israel is still allowed to continue strikes in self-defense, as stated in the agreement between Lebanon and Israel. What part of the ceasefire agreement stops them from bombing Lebanon? It's a ceasefire. Where is the ceasefire if they can say this or that as a threat? And Hezbollah is there in that. Who is fact-checking this, and are we just believing Israel? What part of the ceasefire allows them to occupy Lebanese land, destroy Lebanese homes? Please let me know. The Israeli army shared a photo of a bunch of guns and weapons.
The Strait of Hormuz, again, at a standstill. Just a day after Iran declared it open, the announcement came it was being shut. Iran unhappy that the US naval blockade of its ports has continued, which the US says will remain until a final deal is made.
The Strait of Hormuz is in our internal and territorial water, and we have been always quite clear and crystal clear to everybody that as an anchor of stability, we would like to see this strait is open and safe for passage. Unfortunately, Americans started suffocating Iranians and tried to breach the security of Iran.
Donald Trump, though, insists things are going to plan and that negotiations are continuing.
We'll be talking about Iran later. We have very good conversations going on. It's working out very well. They got a little cute, as they have been doing for 47.
Iranian gunboats belonging to the Revolutionary Guard have fired on at least 2 vessels transiting the strait, which were forced to turn back, though no injuries were reported. Iran says it's reimposed strict military controls there after briefly reopening the strait to shipping on Friday, and that it will stay shut until the US lifts its naval blockade of Iranian ports. It also says that, contrary to Donald Trump's claims, it has no intention of handing over its stockpile of enriched uranium to the United States, and that further talks are not on the cards for now, which is not quite the message that we're hearing from Donald Trump.
We'll be talking about Iran later. We have very good conversations going on. It's working out very well. They got a little cute, as they have been doing for 47 years. Nobody ever took them on. We took them on. They have no Navy. They have no Air Force. They have no leaders. They have no nothing. Actually, their leaders it is regime change. You call that enforced regime change. But
President Trump says Iran has agreed to everything. In a brief interview with CBS, President Trump said Iran agreed to everything the U.S. had on its proposal for a deal, including working jointly with the United States to go into Iran and get that enriched uranium and have it transported back to the United States. Now, President Trump was asked if this would include troops on the ground, and President Trump essentially said it wouldn't have to, that they would go in and get it, they'd be working together, and there wouldn't be any fighting because it's going to happen after there is a firm deal. Now, President Trump in this interview also saying that Iran had agreed not to work with terrorist organizations like Hezbollah or Hamas. All of this, of course, is coming after Iran announced that it would be reopening the Strait of Hormuz. But there are still some questions, including whether or not the United States is going to unfreeze funds for Iran. President Trump has said in an interview that's not going to happen, but we have heard from U.S. officials that that is under consideration.
Iran's announcement yesterday that the Strait of Hormuz was now completely open was greeted with cautious optimism. But then it became clear that vessels still had to take routes designated and controlled by Tehran, and that it wouldn't remain open unless the U.S. lifted its own blockade. And there's also been a blizzard of contradictory statements when it comes to progress in the peace talks. The real issue is that President Trump seems to believe that a deal between Tehran and Washington, what would be a major diplomatic achievement, can be done in a matter of days. But what he describes as insignificant differences amount to what would be major concessions by Iran. And Iran's new leaders, more hardline, aren't indicating they're ready to make them. The one glimmer of hope is that there does seem to be progress behind the scenes on a memorandum of understanding. Both sides would agree to embark on a period of more detailed discussions lasting about 60 days.
We also have news here about a baby saved from a suspected abduction attempt and car crash after a dramatic chase in Kentucky. Deputies say that Brenton Howland forcibly took his 2-month-old from the child's mother and led authorities on a high-speed chase. Officers saying Howland clipped a police cruiser and crashed into a church. The baby safely pulled from the car without any injuries, thank goodness. Howland is in custody and expected to face child endangerment charges.